Hey, this is Chris with Phoenix Gaming. Today we're going to break down this Quar's War. This isn't going to be a review. Instead, we're going to walk through some of the gameplay mechanics on it, and we're going to walk you through some of the how to get started with the game. First off, I'd like to thank everybody for watching. Make sure you hit the like and subscribe if you like the content. Also, just a reminder, Trench Crusade will be on deck for a review. I haven't read through all the rules yet, but I am working on it. Conflict 47 is also coming up, although word on the street is there's potentially a new edition of that, so I'll probably do a review on the old and the new if it does come out, so just be prepared for maybe like a double conflict. And then, Plague Troops is going to be our next firefight video, just to keep everybody in the loop as to what's on deck. Before we dig in, big shout out to Military Gaming Command. I like to give them all the attention I can. So if you're interested in what they do, go to militarygamingcommand.org. They're a nonprofit that benefits veterans. I myself am a veteran, so it's very near and dear to my heart, the things that they do. All right, so this Quar's War, and we're going to be speaking specifically on 1.0 28mm. 1.0 is the battle game. 2.0 has a 15mm, and then it has a skirmish game. The battle game hasn't been updated yet, so we're going to focus on the 1.0 because that's where I generally prefer to play, is in army games, battle games. I don't like 15mm stuff, not from a gameplay perspective, but from a, I already am not a great painter. I'm already not a great painter. So I'm not trying to paint something even smaller than 28. I just prefer that kind of like actual army size, honestly, is a lot of it. It is a 40K size game. They're fun, they're interesting. It can be a little tricky at times. And we're going to be talking about, like I said, exclusively the 1.0 book. None of the expansions, none of the add-ons. We're just going to be walking through core mechanics in the first book. And we're just going to focus on how you can get your models on the table and what to do once they are there. Start with building your army. This Quar's War doesn't use points. I believe there is a supplemental or update book that adds points to the game, but the base rulebook doesn't use points the way that other games do. What it does is it tells you what you can bring based on the mission. Unfortunately, army list construction isn't really the most straightforward thing. And I mentioned that in my review video. It's kind of hidden unless you're going specifically to the missions, and even then, figuring out what the missions are telling you can do is kind of hidden. Your force is dependent on the scenario, and the most basic scenario is on page 89 of the rules. There's going to be a link to the rules in the description, and this is what the scenario tells you. It tells you infantry section is a first section, Alpha Company, 10/23rd line. That's what the Crusaders can bring. The Cofterans can bring the infantry section. Second section, Company 9, the 12/12 free will. I'm not going to pretend like I know how to pronounce that. But what it doesn't tell you is what the heck an infantry section is. It's kind of frustrating as a person who wanted to just get models on the table. I wasn't really interested in playing any of the scenarios. I just wanted my models on the table. I wanted the game to work. I wanted to see how the mechanics worked. And the most basic scenario is literally just put models on the table, but nowhere did it tell me what models I needed to put on the table in order to put models on the table. But all that information is actually on page 18 for Crusaders, page 37 for Royalists. But the issue is that it's nestled in a lot of background and lore, which I'm all about. The book is packed with that type of stuff. But the problem is that there's nothing really definitive to say this is game mechanic, this is lore. And if you're an older Warhammer player like I am, like I started in 3rd edition, you'll know that these kind of, waggle my mouse on them, these kind of force organizations were in those codexes. Like, one of the Space Marine codexes might have said, hey, if you're first company, this is probably what your army could or should look like. If you're a this is what it could or should look like. So when I saw this picture, my brain was just like, oh, well, this is in a section of lore. This is very clearly just more lore. But unfortunately, that was not the case. Like, this is actually how your companies and sections break down. So if you aren't paying real close attention, it's really easy to overlook. And I've already mentioned to the makers of the game, like, hey, look, this game's awesome. It's fantastic. The only thing I would recommend is, like, maybe not the only thing, but one of the few things I'd recommend is take these army construction rules and put them in the appendix so that players can quick reference them side by side without having to find it through all the lore and stuff. Because like I said, as a person who's been playing these types of games for a long time, having your army construction rules in a picture that's nestled in lore really, like, made me overlook it for a while. And then I did finally realize, like, oh, this is it. And to be fair, like, I could just be an idiot. And I'm not saying that, you know, they did everything wrong. I'm just saying, as a person who's been playing for a while, these types of games, I found it very easy to overlook. And I think if I'm finding it easy to overlook, other people will probably as well. So let's look at it, though. Crusader Infantry Organization. So if you're playing the Crusaders, in order to play the meeting engagement mission, you need a single infantry section. And if you look, it tells you what a company is. A company is 2 sections plus the weapon squad plus the heavy weapons section. What we see is a regular section is one is-Caertan with a shotgun. He's effectively your platoon leader. Again, if you want to go to a more historical vernacular. You've got 2 squads of 10. Each squad of 10 has a Yawdrel, which is a squad leader. The Yawdrel plus 6 of your other infantry for a total of 7 get the Bogan, which is just your base assault rifle. And then 3 of them get Rishi, and it's kind of like an automatic rifle, like the Browning automatic rifle. It kind of takes that role. It's not a crew-served weapon per se. It's more of a very light machine gun, like a SAW or, like I said, the Browning. Those also have bayonets, which is a whole separate thing we'll get into later, because that was another thing where I was like, look, the rules aren't super clear. So when you play the Crusaders in that mission, you're going to get 2 squads. So you'll have 2 Yawdryls, you'll have 12 additional Bogan infantry, and you'll have 6 additional Rishi infantry. And then your is-Caertan or your platoon leader, and that's going to be your section. And that's going to be a very small, quick game, because you're only going to have 3 units on the table. You're going to have your platoon leader, and then you're going to have squad 1 and squad 2. If you're a royalist, you're going to have a very similar makeup in terms of you're going to have the is-Caertan, except he's going to have a pistol and a sword instead of the shotgun. And then your Yawdryls are going to have SMGs. And instead of having the Rishis, you're going to have 9 models with the base rifle, which is the Harlech, I believe. And then 1 model is going to have the Kryphen. Actually, you have 8 models with the Harlech, sorry. Because your Yawdryl will have the SMG, 8 models will have the Harlech, 1 model will have the Kryphen. And the Kryphen's meaty, like, not to digress, but that thing is terrifying. Good lord. So you'll have 2 squads, you'll have a platoon leader or is-Caertan. So your makeup is going to be pretty much the same. It's just what the models use is going to be a little bit different. Interestingly, this gives you all the information you would need to scale it up. You don't have to find a whole new scenario or anything like that. You could just say, hey, all right, I want a company for the Crusaders and I want a company for the Royalists. And it will be generally balanced. It won't be perfect. Obviously, terrain's going to affect it. Any objectives that you decide you want to use are going to affect it, because the heavy weapons team for the Royalists is a little different than the heavy weapons section for the Crusaders. And then couple that with, like, Crusaders will have mortars, Royalists will have heavy machine guns and all kinds of different things. So again, it's not a perfect, like, this is balanced. But a company against a company should still provide a very good, fun, balanced game. Before we dig in any further, I do want to give myself a shameless plug. This Quar's War is super cool with a very unique vibe and aesthetic. And if you like these goofy little duders, then, if you want to grab a box, consider using my Amazon affiliate link in the description. It won't cost you anything extra. It doesn't even take away money from War Games Atlantic or the people who make the game. Everybody gets their share, and I just get a little commission on it as well. So again, appreciate the support. Let's get back to what you really, really want. I'll tell you what you want. So now that you understand how to build your force, right? And we're going to assume that we're just using the sections. We're not using companies. We're just going to get them on the table. So once again, deployment is dictated by scenario, which is, it's fine. But my frustration again with that as a player is there's no standardized deployment method. Even if every scenario has the same deployment method, you still have to read the scenarios to verify that they have the same deployment method. So like when my daughter and I played, we just did a roll-off. Whoever rolled higher deployed all their army first, and then whoever lost deployed all their army second. And the reason we did it that way instead of alternating is because the game uses a modified form of alternating activations. So most games, you're not going to get punished for deploying first or going first, deploying second, going second. As long as you deploy well, you should be fine. For meeting engagement, again, the players roll off and the winner may choose who deploys first. Technically, it says randomly determined, so I suppose you could just assign a high-low value. But again, because of my background with like GW and games like that, we just did a roll-off. It all works. After you have deployed your forces, you're going to assign command markers. That's again determined by scenario. In meeting engagement, the player that deploys first may choose to assign markers first or second. What are command markers? Well, let's talk about that. But before we dig into that, we have to dig into how they're used. And I know that seems kind of counterintuitive, but once you understand how they're used, when I tell you what they are, it'll make more sense. Whereas if I tell you what they are and then tell you how they're used, you're just going to be like, yeah, whatever, dude. So the main thing is that the game's broken down into phases, which again, I've talked about in my review. I'll probably put a card somewhere, maybe right now, to the review. It does break some of this down a bit towards the end of the video. You have to understand it's broken down into phases. The first phase is the Caertan's phase, the second phase is the is-Caertan's phase, and the third phase is the Yawdrel phase, and then the fourth phase is the end phase. Command markers are assigned in the Caertan's and is-Caertan's phase only. The Yawdrel's phase is when units are activated, and then the end phase is when you go through, clean things up, do morale, etc. Phase 1 is the Caertan's phase, and for meeting engagement, the player that deployed first chooses which player assigns command tokens first. In the Caertan's phase, the player assigns a token. Generally, an arrow-shaped token is what you want, and that is assigned to each section. So 2 squads, section leader, right? Or is-Caertan. That arrow designates the main direction of offensive pushes or defensive concentration. And that's really just a way to say, hey, you have to put this arrow down to say that if you move, you're generally going to move your squads in this direction. So a good example is like, if you move straight forward, if you're just like, I'm moving this direction, and your squads are here, now they don't have to only move up. They can move kind of out and up, but they can't move down, and they can't just move laterally, right? Like, you have to move more up than laterally is how I would interpret that. So you have to pre-designate your movements. So you'll place, if I have to place first, I'm going to place all my arrows down first. Squads for a section game where you have an is-Caertan and you have 2 squads, you'll place 1 movement token for each section. So you're only going to put 1. But it's important to note that those command tokens really only affect the squads. The is-Caertan is an independent character, and he can move around as he sees fit. So your movement tokens don't dictate the movement for the character, just the squads. Once I've placed all my movement tokens, you'll place all your movement tokens. So if you place second, you get to see what my general concepts are going to be, and then you can play your movement tokens accordingly. But that's a huge like game within the game deep strategy, because if I know I'm placing first, I might place a certain direction as a feint, but then instead try to activate that unit very late and then maybe go prone or just like do the long action shoot. So there's a lot of strategy involved in that, and I love it. I think it's a fantastic way to play a game where you're always thinking. Now, that might not be for everybody, but just know, like, there's a lot of strategy involved in how you want to move things, how you want to do things. Once the player assigns all their movement tokens, and then the other player assigns all their movement tokens, and everybody's done, you're going to go to the is-Caertan's phase. And don't worry, because I'm going to get on a table and I'm going to walk you through the whole process after I talk you through all this. So I'll get models, we'll put tokens down, we'll do all that jazz. Phase 1 is the is-Caertan's phase. And actually, I may just do it on TTS. That makes more sense. For the meeting engagement, the player that deployed first chooses which player assigns command tokens first. We already talked about that, excuse me. The is-Caertan's phase is used to designate fire priorities. Each squad now, not section, but squad, places a fire token to designate what they will shoot at. What I would recommend is your fire tokens, have them color-coded, and then use like the rim of your base maybe, or just have like labels for like first squad, and then your fire tokens could have the same label. I 3D printed some fire tokens and some movement tokens. They're not perfect. I sat down and made them in about 10 minutes and then 3D printed them. I'll put that Thingiverse link in the description as well. Actually, I don't even know if I put them on Thingiverse yet, but I'll put them up and I'll put that link in the description as well so that you will have access to those. They're real basic, real simple. You should blah blah. Each squad places a fire order token to designate what they will shoot at, should they opt to make a fire order. So remember, when you're placing these tokens, there's nothing that says you have to move, and there's nothing that says you have to shoot. It's just saying if you do, this is where you will do it. You can pick terrain, open ground, enemy units, it doesn't matter. You can place that firing order token pretty much anywhere you want to. Just know that, like, if first squad says they're going to shoot at this unit, if that unit is no longer an eligible target when that squad comes up to shoot, then they can't shoot. They just have to find other things to do. I'm going to go first. I'm going to place all my fire tokens. There's certain things that won't need them. Anything that operates as an independent character, again, your is-Caertans. I believe the heavy weapons sections don't need them. I don't remember if the mortars do off the top of my head. I'd have to go through and read the mortar rules. I don't think they do, but I wouldn't swear to it. Typically, your heavy weapons teams, if they're not attached to a squad, they don't need a fire token. They'll just get to shoot. And the reason I bring that up is because the Crusaders have a light machine gun that actually attaches to squads and gives the squads like really good firepower. So just keep that in mind as well. Once again, the player places all of the tokens, then the other player does the same. So I'll put all of mine down. You'll get to see where it is I'm going to shoot, but that's after we've designated movements. So I can really plan on how I want to shoot, and then potentially, again, do like a feint to try to force a unit back. So this game isn't about model removal. Like, yes, it does help. Yes, it will happen. But you want to actually almost use your fire tokens, and you want to use all these different things to try to funnel people where you want to. It's more about using suppression and threat to dictate the flow of the game than it is just like roll a bunch of dice and make you pick up models. So just a heads up there. Quick note on the command tokens. Again, I've already said it. There are units that don't receive them, independent units such as the Caertans and is-Caertans. And then, like I said, there are others, but for the first game, the only thing you need to know is your officers don't need them. Now that all of your command tokens are down, we're going to jump to the Yawdrel phase. But before we do the Yawdrel phase, we're going to go through a table walkthrough. I'll pull it up on TTS, and I'll record it on TTS, and we'll do the walkthrough on TTS. I feel like that's going to be a little bit easier for you and me in order to make this a bit more visual and easy to see. All right, you can see here we have our table. We have the is-Caertan here. We have a squad here. See if we can find the Yawdrel, who's there. And then the Yawdryl, who's there. And then we have a couple tokens, and we have our activation deck. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to do the Caertan's phase. Even though we don't have a Caertan, you still go through the Caertan's phase in smaller games. The Caertan's responsibilities are just performed by the is-Caertan. And the Caertan phase is the one where you put these handy-dandy move tokens in. So the first thing you do is you put it down. If I'm going to place first, I'll put it down based on the section, not the squads. So let's say I wanted to, so you put it down with the section. So if I wanted the whole section to generally move that direction, you know, like this, I would put it that way. I could have them move that way. If I put it straight forward, remember that doesn't mean you can only go forward. It just means you have to go generally forward. So I would put that down for the whole section, and a section is your is-Caertan, your squad, and your squad. Once I've done that, and then my opponent has done that, we then do firing orders. So I might say, okay, this squad is going to target this open area here. So if anything moves into that open area, I can shoot at it. Or if there's a squad back here, I could still target the squad. Now, I may not be able to target them when my activation comes up, but again, like I said before, part of that is the strategy of the game. If I want to try to keep this squad from poking out, I may try to target them in the hopes that my opponent won't put them out there for me to shoot at. So once I put this squad, I can now go to the second squad, and let's say I have them target the same unit. Let's say there's a unit back here, and they both target that unit. So now this squad back here, this pretend squad, would have to decide whether they want to go out this way or go out this way. Either way, they're going to get targeted by something, theoretically. So that's how you would do it. Now, once all my fire tokens are down, and then all your fire tokens are down, then we end the is-Caertan's phase, and we move into the Yawdryl's phase. In the Yawdryl's phase, during this phase, this is when you actually get to activate your units, and this is done with a deck of activation cards. For most games, you need a deck of cards with numbers. We use Uno cards, and then I've just used a magic marker for anything that's like higher than 10, for example, to write the number on it instead of just repeating cards. Sorry, brain. You know, like there's rules like you can find for if you use a regular deck of cards where it's like spades go first and hearts go second. I'm not trying to remember all that, so I just went and bought a cheap deck of Uno cards, and now I have like a magic marker and I can just write it all out, and that works perfectly. You're gonna need to start with 1, and you need a number for every unit that will activate. So again, for the base mission, you're gonna have 2 squads and an is-Caertan per side. That's a total of 6 units, because you'll have 2 squads and I'll have 2 squads for 4, and then we'll both have is-Caertans for 5 and 6. So you get cards numbered 1 through 6. You're going to shuffle the deck, and then you're going to deal the number of cards to each player based on how many units they have. So if you have 3 units and I have 3 units, we deal out 3 to you, 3 to me, and then you're going to pick them up, and you're going to secretly assign a card to each of your units. Then once all the cards have been assigned, the player that has the number 1 starts by flipping the card, activating the unit, and performing actions, and then play is going to go in sequential order. And I will walk you through that also on the table. We'll deal out some cards, we'll go through play, and then we'll do actions and how to use them in the next episode. So stick around for just a second. I'll walk you through the activation, and then I'll probably do one whole long example of going through the commands. Okay, now we're going to go into the Yawdrel phase. This is when you actually activate units. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to deal. And this is just so I can deal 3 cards out and show you. It doesn't matter what the numbers are. Normally, I'd only have, again, if we had 3 units and 3 units, there'd be 6. But now that I have my cards, in TTS, it's harder to do it secretly. I'm sure there's a way, but you'd put 1 on that unit, you'd put 1 on that unit, and you'd still put 1 on your independent characters. I guess you can kind of finagle it. Good to know. Then because I don't have the number 1, the number 1 would go first, the number 2 would go second, then my number 3 would activate, and you just go in order. And then once all the units have activated, you just shuffle them up. And then when a unit dies, you just take the highest number out of the stack. So like, let's say this unit just dies, so then whatever the highest number in the card deck is, it comes out to compensate for that. Now I have seen people leave the cards in, just so it makes it a little harder to count them. You know, maybe that means with an odd number of cards, or not the right number of cards, somebody doesn't get a number 1, or like there's a number missing, and it just makes it a little harder to count the cards. That's up to you. I'm just telling you, when a unit dies, a card comes out of the deck. Hopefully that helps kind of explain this a little bit better. I wanted to make sure we had some visual aids to go with the videos, so hopefully that helps. Thanks. Thank you. Just a reminder, Plague series is still going strong. I'm going to be doing a stream probably Friday morning. I don't know that this video will get done by Friday, like the 3rd. There's a good chance this video doesn't go up till the weekend. But tomorrow, Friday, the 3rd, or yesterday, depending on what day this goes up, I'm going to stream a list preview on my Enforcers, and I'll probably do a recap because I think my league game starts today. So look forward to that for some more firefight content. And everybody, hope you had a safe new year. Hope everybody had a good time. And stay tuned for more Quars War content as well. Thank you.